Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October edition of the Librarian Speaks. I am your host, the designated extrovert of the Carter Johnson Librarian Collection, Matthew Carey, and we are here this evening with Mama Vi Johnson. We have some exciting announcements tonight. We're going to get one started right off the bat. If everybody would like to take a second and go to the web address that I am putting in chat, you will see sucktherainbow.com. You will see that To Love, to Obey, and to Serve is once again available for purchase.
Look, guys, look.
Oh, wait. Char's been sitting over there with this in her hand, and I've got to find her. Hang on. Here we go.
Look. It's actually in my hand, y'all. It's available. Sorry. 3 years. We're trying to get this done for 3 years. Oh, I'm okay.
And you'll be able to tell the new one from the old one because the covers are different.
Yes, they are.
There's way too much of my cleavage on the cover, but
No,
that's okay.
it's fine.
But that is incorrect.
The stories I have heard this woman tell.
No.
Yeah.
And I've heard nothing but too much cleavage for the last 3 weeks.
No such thing. No such thing.
No such thing. That's what I kept saying.
Yeah.
And just for you guys, it'll only be available until this shuts down. There is a limited edition t-shirt
like
and
while we're on
hoodie that you can only get. We're not announcing it anywhere else. And when this Zoom shuts down, it's going away. So only you guys get it because of all the support you put up with the cover photo on it, which I had to argue with Vi about for 45 minutes today.
Why?
Because there's too much cleavage.
No.
I don't agree either, but that's what she keeps telling me.
Again, she's keeping everybody abreast of things.
I mean, they sent you some back to replace it.
Maybe
So
there
these are
could be a
limited to
secondary
the
one,
attendees of tonight's
cleavage.
Librarian Speaks.
and then the cleavage, the boob workage,
Boob working.
the boob stress ball.
To Love, to Obey, to Serve is available.
And because if you're anything like me, you go crazy in a store like mine. I did make sure there was a payment plan available.
Real quick question. Is this a download of an audio book, of a transcript, or an actual book?
This is an
The actual
actual book.
Perfect.
You're ordering a paper book and it will be printed and sent to you.
Getting 3. I mean, just to have one extra. So
Those all say shipping calculated at checkout. It would not let me remove that for some reason. I've included the shipping in the price. You will not have added shipping in the cart.
you just
Even to Canada?
It should include Canada.
Okay,
If
thank
it
you.
doesn't, let me know. And I will see if I can figure out why. Because I told it to include Canada. Now, whether Canada Customs lets it through because buys banned there, I have no clue.
Yeah, I am banned in Canada. That was actually a point of honor for the longest time, but getting across the border was hell.
You
I mean, I don't
yourself
know
were banned in Canada or the book?
Because actually it was because of Black Leather in Color. Going back to 1994 when Living in Leather was held in Toronto. The magazine got stopped at the border. And we were waiting for it and finally told it was banned. They were seizing all copies and they'd be investigating all of the writers and contributors, which we kind of blew off. And then we went on, we had a banner made, took us 6 hours to cross the border, that we flew quite proudly that Black Leather in Color was banned in Canada. Fade out. About 10 years later, I had to go to Canada to do a speaking tour in Calgary, only for a weekend. I had a weekender. They kept me in customs almost all day. What are you coming in for? I'm doing a lecture tour. What are you talking about? I am talking about human sexuality. Are you the Vi Johnson who wrote, Yes, I am? You do realize your books, and all of your writings are banned here. No, I didn't know that. Do you have any in your suitcase? Now, this went on all day until my host was convinced I had missed the plane, only to find out that, yes, I was on the plane and somehow magically never got off. And since this was long before the age of cell phones,
Of course.
he waited and waited, and waited. Finally went home. About 3 hours after he got home, I called him and said, Don, I think I'm free now. And he came back to the airport, got me. That's what happened, I told him. We laughed about it. A few years after that, I had to go to a family reunion in Canada. That was novel. Another day to get through Canadian customs. They were far more intrigued because I had the dog with me, and I think it was my dog that's actually saved me and made it only a day instead of them going, get the hell out of our country.
Wow.
So I can proudly boast that I've been banned in Canada.
Are you still banned in Canada?
Don't know.
Only one way to find out.
When's the last time you tried to go?
About 15 years ago, give or take.
Did you get through okay?
Oh, no, that was family reunion.
Oh, okay.
Did I get through? Yes. Was it okay? It took a
You haven't
while.
been back since then, as
No.
where I'm getting.
No, I've had no
Probably.
reason, really.
Probably with good reason. So the book is available, limited edition shirt and hoodie for you all just for tonight, to thank you for being a part of Librarian Speaks. And Shar, I sat here and listened to her, did have to argue with Mama for 45 minutes to get approval for that hoodie. And Mama, you should thank me. I insisted she get approval for the shirt and the hoodie.
Who wants to be running around wearing my tits?
When you were,
Me,
I do.
that's a very interesting question, and I'm sure has a lot more positive answers than you could even fathom. That's something we could do. We could have them molded and made in silicone. I know a bunch of folks that would be popular with.
I'm feeling my future passing in front of me and my past running right behind it.
So those are two. I told you there were going to be at least two. There is one more, and it's huge. And I'm going to tease that one out for a little while. Mama, off the back of us talking about a paper printed book, which you can get now, wants to have a conversation with us tonight about paper.
Before I even go into that, because I was hoping to get into an interesting discussion, I was told that, you know, after the old lady went to bed, y'all just stayed here and partied until damn near daylight. What in heaven's name were y'all doing once the old lady like keeled over? Or should I be staying in like
what we had on file?
Well, the very tail end of it was, as these things always devolve into, either Scott and I, or in this case, it was both of us, digging through historical files and showing pictures and patches and history and you know, those things we do.
I checked up on some people who had talked to me the time before about their leather journey. We had some other various and sundry questions. We had some stories, a few stories come in, and those were fun. And then there were pictures of Mir, and it devolved from there for a while, because there were just pictures of Mir after that for quite some time. And I can't think about that right now because I'll stop talking. And then there was the Matt and Scott hour, the Carrie and Scott hour, where we went through Mineshaft and we went through Fire Island. What's the name of that event again?
We had the tour of Fire Island.
We went through Excelsior's run on Fire Island, Lust for Life.
Lust for Life.
Several years worth. It was fantastic.
It was awesome. There were all kinds of almost naked men. It was
And there were
fabulous.
some that were actually naked. You saw some of
There
them?
were some that were actually naked.
Well, if we
It
get
was
into the mindset
fabulous.
pictures, yeah, usually.
Oop.
What are you ooping about?
Shaw was thinking about naked men.
I was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, is that what you needed, the shipping link? I'm not following with the question for the shipping link.
I accidentally answered her to Susie, so sorry, Susie.
It's supposed to be shopping.
Okay,
Yeah,
We are all currently shopping
We're
at
shopping.
the moment.
yeah. It's an easy site to get lost in and get into a lot of mischief.
please
We are
feel free to
deciding which color
share.
t-shirt we want with your boobs on them.
Yes.
Please
I
feel
just
free
want
to
to have the
share the
opportunity to
website.
shop with y'all. Thank you.
It's there. Everything that's Carter Johnson Librarian Collection that you purchase on selectrainbow.com, the proceeds go directly to the Carter Johnson Librarian Collection.
Yep.
So everything you see on there, you are contributing to the Carter Johnson and getting awesome swag for yourselves.
And there will be more products going up. I had to completely rebuild this store.
Yeah.
So I'm missing some logos in some places. I've got a few more products that need to go up. So there will be more later. But I got the important stuff up. The book is there. And the boobs on the t-shirt are there. And those were the important things.
And those again, once again, are just for the duration of the Librarian Speaks tonight. So Mama's boobs, limited time only. Cleavage, Mama's cleavage. Cleavage seems to be the hang.
With your choice of color.
Yes. Vi's cleavage in your choice of color. What more could you possibly want from one?
Oh, you're not on camera.
Careful how you answer.
That picture. See, there are only two people in the known world that I would trust to have free access to my computer. Shar is one and Pulse is the other. Now, more years ago than I can think, easily going back at least 14 or 15 years.
This picture?
That picture was taken by a woman named Rain. It was taken while we were at Blackbeat in order to do a close-up of the hands. Now, had I known that Shar would have taken the whole thing, I would have had it cut and cropped so that she couldn't. But the photo, which is best, I think, done in black and white, and zeroes in on the hands with the lock hanging in between, is called With These Hands. And a lot of you may remember the lyrics to that song, With These Hands, I will cling to you, I'm yours forever and a day, and so on and so forth. And it was the picture was taken of just the hands blown up, and the words to the lyric were superimposed almost as a watermark over it. It was a gift to a very special woman in my life. And I still remember what that looked like when it was finished. And it was a very stunning image. And as most, what do we say now, to the right side of the slash, I think can appreciate the imagery with the sentiment that went with it, especially if you know the entire lyric.
Which should be available in the next few days because that was the barter I had to make in order to get the t-shirt for tonight.
I am going to find the black and white, or when you flip through things, you'll find the black and white of the close-up, which I really think is quite pretty.
It is a great picture. I've seen that multiple times. And
It is a gorgeous picture.
just to be upfront with the facts here, I picked this picture for the cover. Number one, because it is a striking grab your attention image, and it was perfect for the cover of the book. And I will take a survey here of everybody in the Zoom. Do you agree the cover of the book is fantastic?
Boy, are you being led down a road? Never mind.
Yes.
So, paper. Mama wanted to talk about paper.
So I wanted to tell you a story and see if I could get some discussion going. I have often said we are products of the generation that we come out of. And that actually applies pretty much across the board. But as things evolve and the next generation comes on, some things are kept and built on. And other things that are no longer relevant are discarded. Now, I say that as a background to this. A week or two ago, I was part of an online discussion, and it was a wonderful intergenerational, well, how did you guys do this? And us old dogs are going, well, how are you guys doing this? And so on. And a young man looked at the three old farts on the panel with absolute sincerity and went, how did you all meet? So how did you find people? How did you get together? How did you communicate? I mean, you know, what were you all doing? And the three of us kind of looked at each other on screen, and we weren't really, the question stunned us so badly that we had to think about it. And I started off by going, we wrote letters. And he said, email. And I went, no, letters. And fade out. So I was sitting here today doing some sorting to get a load of things ready to go from my workroom to the library. And I came across 3 stacks of old letters from one of the people whose lives we're sorting out. And when I pulled this bundle out, it was beautifully tied in a little silk pink ribbon. And I flipped through a few of them and read a couple of them. And it's the usual thing that, well, back in the day, when stamps were like 2 cents, 2 to 3 cents, people wrote what they did on any given basis, or how the children were growing, or how the family was changing. But a couple of the letters that I came across were actually very sweet love letters. And as I was thinking back to other lessons that I taught when I was still teaching history, and realizing that so much of what we know about the last 9 or 10 generations, we know from letters and journals. We know an awful lot about the Civil War because of letters that were written by soldiers and occasionally given to the drummer boy if they didn't think they'd live. Can you get this to my wife if I don't make it? Or the usual correspondence that went back and forth between families, or cards that were sent for special occasions, or even postcards, which is a phenomenon that I don't think any of you have probably seen in at least the last 15 years. Now, as I looked at those and then did some more straightening out and filing some other things that one of our patrons who I can see had sent, it included a stack of about 150 greeting cards that were so common when I was a kinkling. We would send them back and forth. Sometimes we sent them because of the artwork. Sometimes we sent them just because they were fun. Sometimes it was a flirt. Sometimes it was a very simple, hi, I'm thinking about you. And the art on some of them is so very striking. And by about 75 or 80, kinky cards had become their own business. We had whole sections of cards that were put out for gay men. Some of them fun, lighthearted, risque, the different publishing houses that did them. As we got even bigger, they evolved to things like this that had different flags on them. As our artists got involved, it got even more beautiful because you got to see, like I have a lot of Tara Lizard, who is no longer with us. I have a lot of Tara's greeting cards. They were pieces of her photography, and they were stunning. But as pretty as they are, we also actually use them. And I suppose that sentimentally, I'm probably in a generation that remembers the delight of getting a card in the mail with a simple note on it or something that was light or fun. I got one from our patron the other day, and while I was absolutely stunned at the gift that came with it, the delight of just getting the card because someone had been thinking of me. Cottage industry that popped up. People told about their own adventures. This was a card from a couple by the name of Ward and Rocky from the Sanctuary. It was taken on their honeymoon, and it was used as the thank you card for all of the people who had come to their wedding. Our artists, and Tom, I think you would remember the art of Wes Graywolf. And the pictures that were all parts of his art that he made in the cards, and even ultimately made a business from it. But I looked at these and I realized that all of this paper, and remember I've said before, the library is most assuredly paper pushers, was part of answering that question. How did we communicate? How did we know each other? How did we get to share adventures? What was it like back in my day to communicate with people? And we had club newsletters, club runs, club run books, things that got mailed out. In the early days of the internet, we were dealing with long bulletin boards, but people kept these because we wanted to reflect back on what had happened. And the run books, the club newsletters, the newspapers, the communication magazines that kept us all in touch with each other were the things that we looked forward to. Either they came in the mail because they were from the different clubs who might have been part of a group, or friends would make small newsletters just for their extended leather families and exchange them, or even the contact magazines that had, well, they're nowhere near as simple as some of the ads you would find in Grindr or something like that. But that was how we communicated. And another part of the discussion was, well, that is stuff that I can keep on my phone. Now, some of that I understand because it's a new world, a new age, and it is definitely far more electronic. But to some extent, to me anyway, it feels like the ability to have the old memory or the memory that you might leave behind for someone else to find is getting lost. But I also understand that there is a brand new generation that is far more minimalist and to some extent, I think, less possession oriented. Now, to some extent, I understand the encumbrance of some possessions, but where or how does this generation separate the memory and the electronics. And it's something that I'm more curious about as the library expands and we try to put more and more things online, so that they are available to everyone. But where is the line between the convenience, for instance, of a tablet and I just want to hold it in my hand and always have it and not have to wonder if I can retrieve it from the cloud or if somehow it's going to accidentally get deleted. I know yes, I'm a paper pusher, and anyone who has ever been in my house knows that. But far too often, I've heard so many of my kinklings go, something happened to my phone and I lost all my contacts, or oh my God, I lost all my photos, or is there a blending? Is there a new thing? Is there a new way? Is paper obsolete? Is paper coming back? I don't know. And I was hoping to get a good discussion going.
Well, I have a thought that popped into my head as soon as you said that. And it's simply this, that we used to get stuff in our mailbox that we wanted to get, as opposed to nowadays where it's all junk email and bills. So that occurred to me, but I have a tub of stuff I have to shred. So, wow, we got a bunch of hands up. Shar, go ahead.
I'm going to tell you a little story here. And the conclusion is that it should all be paper. I don't care what anybody says, it should all be paper. And the reason it should all be paper is because I spent the last 17 years researching leather because I wanted to know. I had thousands of emails from old gay leathermen that are dead now. I know because I went looking for them again after this catastrophe happened. I have none of those emails because I went, oh, it's electronic. It's in my computer. It'll be fine. And it was right up until my computer crashed. And I found out that my server wasn't saving my emails. So I lost it all. The only one I ever printed out was because he wanted a copy of it. It was where I got the history of flagging, the beginning of flagging.
Origin of the hanky code.
The origin of the hanky code. Right? And that's the only one I have out of thousands of men's stories about this bar that started, that group that started, this event that happened, the first gay rodeo. I had that story.
Traditions from different areas.
Traditions from different areas. Where do you earn boots? Where do you earn belts? Where do you earn this? Where do you earn that? Because you don't earn it all everywhere. And I lost it all. So yes, there is absolutely a place for paper. I don't care how young you are, because it goes away. It goes away, and the paper is less likely to do that.
Susie?
There are other hands up.
I've got them. Susie, go ahead.
So this is Bella. So a couple things. I think that you bring up a really good point, Shower, in that like a lot of the history that we have was not contained. We didn't have social media. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have the electronics that we have now, the repositories, the clouds, things like that. And I think that all of the paper that we have, which is one of the great reasons I love and support you guys like so much that you have been able to keep and protect a lot of the things that not a whole lot of people have had, right? Those pieces of paper are priceless, right? I 100% believe that of course the paper needs to be preserved and the people using the paper at the time needs to be preserved. You know, also going forward, being able to scan them, have them online, have them in a library that is electronic or in a cloud along with the paper is a great backup, right? To preserve photos, to preserve the letters, to preserve the sentiment that, you know, folks weren't afforded back in the day, right? And I am a firm believer in that it should not only be in electronic mode if we have a paper version. If people aren't doing paper version anymore, those things still need to be preserved. And of course you can, you know, lose things on a computer, you can lose things on, okay, I'm showing my age. Back in the day, you know, you had it on a floppy disk, an actual disk that was floppy. You know, those things go away just like cassettes did, just like records have been melted or lost in your dashboard because of the heat and things like that. So I feel like what you guys are doing is super immensely important because we can not only have a place to keep the paper, but also upload it so that people have access to it, right? Who can stream it, download it as a PDF, right? Or, you know, be discussed on a Zoom call like this and some way be preserved in multiple different arenas so that if a computer dies or a cloud doesn't work as well as we think we would like it to, that there is multiple ways to access that information. So just because I delete an email, it doesn't mean that that history is lost. So, you know, to what Vi is saying is that yes, moving forward, I mean, especially, you know, young folks, young kinklets, are accessing things through the cloud, through what they can find online. And so I think that that's probably just as important, but also preserving the paper, I think, is extremely important too. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks.
There's and for me, I wanted to say, I'm definitely one of those sentimental people. I got letters, I sent letters. I have a whole collection of love letters from when I was younger, because we don't really send those anymore. And I also think that there's a blend to be happening, that there is something magical about the thing, the piece of paper, if you can touch it, or the book. I have a first edition book of a book that has changed my life. I got it when it was the third edition, but I was like, I need that first edition. I also want the second edition. And I'm not an avid reader, so to buy like all editions of a book was a big deal. It's much like I can see a picture of the Grand Canyon, and that's great. It's amazing. But when I stand at the Grand Canyon, it is something different to behold. And that comes with access, right? Can I travel there? Am I gonna be able to travel to the pyramids, for the example, or anywhere else that's amazing? I liken it to that sort of thing. So if I can't travel to it, if I can't go to the library or to the Leather Archives and Museum or any place else where the physical stuff is held, maybe being able to at least see the history. You know, the after party last time, you know, we went through tons of pictures, and frankly, a lot of, you know, most of the faces on those pictures, I didn't know who they were, but I was like, those are my people on those pictures, you know, from the 20s, or I'm sorry, from the 70s and whenever. It's like, that's where I came from. Now I can see it. I don't have to imagine it. So there's a benefit in having that, having it available electronically. But man, if somebody had said, here's a photo album I'd like to show you from, you know, the 70s, from a motorcycle run from the 80s. To have that in my hands, I just would honestly probably have tears in my eyes and cry.
Susie, may I ask you a quick question? You were talking about writing letters and receiving letters. What, this is probably an emotional response. What was it like to get it in the mail? And is it the same finding a personalized email?
It's not the same. I'll start there. It's great to get a personalized email, but when I see the handwriting, when I see how the pen changes or the pencil, how the weight changes, when especially when there's any kind of emotion, because I know for me, if I'm writing, I write one way, and then if I get angry or sad, like the hand changes. And there's something about that. It's much like getting tone, except it's, you know, not auditory. So when I would get those, and first of all, you know, I send a letter, which took hours because I would think about this person. I would be talking about what was going on. So I was connected to that person for hours, or what, you know, however long it took to write the letter. And then there was the anticipation. I'm still thinking about them because I'm like, I wonder if I'll get their letter today. You know, okay, I sent mine a week ago and they're in New York and it's going to take how long? And, you know, they got to write it and they're busy. You know, it's that whole anticipation. So if it takes 2 weeks for me to get the letter, I'm still not 24/7, but I'm still connected to that moment. And I think when I write by hand, first of all, it's a different mental emotional connection, first of all, than when I type. And it brings greater richness and depth and color to it. Whereas if I get an email, I'm going to be like, oh, I got to reply, and just like hammer it out in the 5 minutes that I'm free and see if I can just, you know, do it real quick. If it's, you know, something I want to put time into, like, well, okay, I'll get to it in a minute, or, you know, tomorrow I'll do this email. So it's a very different, it becomes a task to reply, even if I love the person, I don't want to connect, but it's for writing. And it involves me, if that makes sense. Maybe it's because I'm a creative, but it involves part of my being when I write.
Yep. Susie, I had a question. I don't remember if you were here or not. In a previous Librarian Speaks, Mama said that we are standing on the shoulders of our ancestors so high that we can't see the ground. When we were going through pictures and history, does that help you see the shoulders you're standing on?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I have done a little bit, not to the level you guys have, but I've been interested, and from the beginning I was interested in leather history. I mean, and I'll probably, just as a side note, I came out when I was 13 in 1983 in the Midwest, in the Bible Belt, and there happened to be a gay youth group in St. Louis. And every week we met, and it was dedicated to one gay man and one lesbian whose birthday was in that week. What I learned was we have always been here. We have always been here. And I wouldn't have known that had I not had that connection. So yes, I got a bit better vision. You know, I know I'm way up high on those shoulders, but I've known that there's an undercurrent, and I know a lot of it has been either lost and or if it has been kept, I haven't had access to it in a large way, if that makes sense.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Palm, any thoughts?
I was thinking back to what Susie had said about the connection, writing the letter and then waiting for the answer. There was a wonderful novel that came out, I think in the 60s, called 84 Charing Cross Road. And the book is a series of letters between a woman in the United States and her pen pal, who was in London. And the book is this series of letters of her sending care packages to them during World War II when they were under the Blitzkrieg and they couldn't get things, of him telling her, because he and his wife ran a bookstore at 84 Charing Cross Road, of talking about the new books that they had just gotten in, or what it was like when they had to buckle down. And you follow this relationship between these two people for almost 40 years, until the day the teacher in America can finally retire and take the dream vacation to London and see the family bookstore. And she gets there just as it's closing down, because the children no longer want to keep it. But all the children are there. The parents have since died. And she introduces herself, and they knew her as well as they knew their own parents because of the letters that had gone back and forth. And the connection of these two pen pals over decades, and children, and loss, and love, and everything else. But even the letter, do any of you still write letters? Do any of you still send Christmas cards? Are these things of the past? And if so, and no harm, no foul, but if so, how are they being replaced that still maintains the emotional connection?
I will go so far as to say, if you've never written somebody a letter and gotten one back, try it out.
Can I jump in now? Please.
We're in a line here,
Okay.
Bulls.
I'm here.
Yeah.
I had to change venues. My tablet was failing me.
This one's got a lot of people fired up, Pulse. I'm getting to you, I promise.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Sure can.
Okay. So I agree with Susie and them with all that, having, I hate to put it in this sort of terms, in this sort of manner, but for a true leather person, they're going to want to have that. They're going to want to hold that piece of history, because that piece of history is there. We feel it within our own selves when we hold that piece of leather. Whether it was just a motorcycle guy who rode a motorcycle for years, or whether the piece was a capped master from 2 generations ago, we all view it all the same. And to feel that energy and what it meant to that individual that wore it, what they did while they wore that leather, we feel it. We want to kind of experience what they've gone through with wearing that leather. Not to mention just picking up, this is one of those situations where I'm like, I really am going to try to make it up there this year to the library, but I want to be able to sit there and hold a brochure. I mean, just a brochure of an event. Just, stuff like that. And, to me, and I'm sure to a lot of us here tonight and many across the world, I mean, we want to feel it. Those of us that are true to who we are and what we believe and follow, is that being able to touch and hold this stuff is a lot more meaningful. And to be able to keep it on a digital level, I think would be great. And here's speaking from somebody who's in a specific generation that grew up with a lot of the technology and stuff, but I still live quote unquote old school. To be able to sit here and actually have backups, and like Susie was saying, to be able to sit here and be able to have it like on a external drive, or or even on a Google Drive or something, and still be able to have certain things accessible. I wouldn't say to have everything accessible. Certain things we're going to want to preserve in some sort of way, or at least give it a blurb of, or an excerpt of whatever it is that's in that piece of leather. Whether it's a picture or something like that. It's one of those things that it's better to kind of give somebody enticement to be able to go and see it, and then they go, well, I want to know more about it. So I want to go there and be able to get the chance to be able to experience it and learn about it more than what this little blurb gives me. But I just feel like, because we have how many annexes? 6?
7.
More?
Yeah.
7. Okay. So, something like that, just to sit there and be able to go, okay, you have this many places, and this is something that I would love to be able to do too, is just to be able to have to be a part of an annex like that, to be able to go, here's where you can come to be able to go, hey, if you want to be able to feel it, you want to be able to learn about it, it's here, it stays here and within the other annexes. But the leather community is still growing. We've always had our waves, just like the regular BDSM community, but for us to be able to have that in hand is it. I know, speaking to a lot of leather folk around the areas that I have been in, that this is a bigger deal for us to be able to hold it in our hands. But I do agree, just in case something were to happen, to at least preserve it even digitally, in case, because not only does something happen with the server or something like that happen, but even a fire could happen and we could lose a good chunk of it. So any way we can preserve it, I think, is the best way we can do that.
I agree, Jake. Yeah. Mama?
There are so many little things that are part of that paper culture. I was talking earlier about just getting this in the mail. I looked down, looked at the card, and immediately, because when I got it out of the mail, it was face down. But feeling it meant somebody had thought enough to send me a card. And when I turned it over and saw who it was from, I smiled immediately. I didn't have to know what was in it. It was the idea that someone had thought enough of me to send this. But as I look back at, let me see if I can find some of what I think we've lost. And while I'm not going to in any way say I understand non-fungible tokens, NFTs, or whatever the hell they are, being able to hold it, understand the artistry of it, seems to me to be very different than having a token on my computer that says I own 1/147th of it, or however those things get divided. But part of what I think we've lost as a culture, not just leather, but as the generations change, is some of the artistry. Now I look at the art of Ray Castro, who is one of my favorite modern artists. He did these cards, And they were gifts to each of the title holders that they could use for fundraising. It's a basic blank card. You know, they could write their messages or thank you notes or whatever. But in the artwork, we see the art of Ray Castro. Now, this one was done for Goddess Lakshmi, who was a Ms. World. And she is giving because her theme was check your peck and caress your breast, because she spent her year talking about the Avon Breast Cancer Association. So she is teaching how to give a breast exam to two Ms. Worlds, Karen McGee and Annie Romano. But the point is, it contained Ray's artwork. He did the same thing for other title holders. Now, just getting something like this in the mail, or some of the older pieces of art, or some of the ones that I had previously showed you, like the photography of Tara Lizard, or the art of Drubskin, all of those things became cottage industries for us. And we've lost them. Not because we would or wouldn't support the artist, but because nobody's going to send the card. And again, I don't know if that is just something that is going the way of all flesh, as I'm trying to find just a beautiful and hot example. Now, Tara's artwork. It was the way she raised money, but every time I see something like this, I think of the artist. The same thing with, as funny as it sounds, a sappy Hallmark Christmas card, or a birthday card, or that handwritten letter. Someone thought enough of me or about me to send it, just as I think about someone else. And that's so much of what I'm afraid we're losing, is something that is personal. Yes, Daddy, I hear you in terms of leather and wanting to have that tactile, sensory, straight from the hand to the heart to the mind feeling. But on a broader, looking at it from a broader perspective, are we losing what all of these things symbolize, which is something that is personal? That is a personal connection, whether it be person to person, club to club. Spirit to spirit.
Now you've nailed it. That's the one. That's the one.
And again, I'm the first to tell you, I am a product of my generation. And so I am eager to hear, what is replacing this? Or is it a hybrid of the two? What is the next generation doing that is similar to this card? Is there something coming along behind it? I don't know. I am not an internet baby. Hell, it took me forever to figure out how to make the damn computer work.
It still works. We got a bunch of hands. I got a little bit of housekeeping to do here real quick. We've had a bunch of folks come in. Marnie, Beyond That Matt, Skybree, and Daisy. Welcome, everybody. The announcements tonight were that To Love, To Obey, To Serve is once again available in print. You can go to the link that I've just put in the chat, sucktherainbow.com. And as an exclusive for our Librarian Speaks attendees, there is a limited edition t-shirt and hoodie available on the website, which I have also linked. That will be available only for the duration of this presentation. Scott.
So Vi, yes, you get a card from me at Christmas every year. So yes, that does happen. But the handwriting that is on it is actually Tom's. It's not mine. I create all the envelopes and do all the rest of the work. He writes them all out. I actually grew up next door to someone who was known as an engrosser. And for those of you who do not know what an engrosser is, she wrote letter perfect. She could write upside down and backwards with both hands. And at the same time.
Wow.
Da Vinci.
Huh?
Da Vinci.
Oh, very much so. She never bought a card. She made her own cards. What she would do is she would take old cards that people sent her and she would recycle them. In fact, my family has a large stack of them because they were so good. They were art in themselves that we didn't throw them out. I actually have an example of it upstairs. But the thing is that with my own handwriting, it's horrible. Even though I was taught by an engrosser, it didn't stick. I have the line from Steel Magnolias. I recognize that penmanship anywhere. You've got the handwriting of a serial killer. So so writing letters is not something that I do. And that's where I have to rely on my husband to write things out. I type everything as best as I can. But as far as some of the things that have been said, I'm going to go all the way back to what Char was talking about with saving things electronically, and then all of a sudden you go back to access them and they're no longer there. A good portion of the Bay State Marauders Club meeting minutes from the early years are gone because of that reason. So that got me, once burnt, twice learned. So I actually, on a regular basis, put it on a thumb drive. I also have an external drive, and then it's on the computer as well. So it's being saved in 3 different places. And there's also the thought that is going through my head that what if something happened in the house and we had a fire and these things went bye-byes. We're now putting it on. Neela had 2 laptops. One's going to go to a secretary. The other one's going to go to a treasurer, but they're also going to have all of the files on it as well. So you're going to have it in 5 different places, because this way you can put it in one spot. As a person that does collect all kinds of things for history, I've had the pleasure of having gotten the historical files for Vikings MC and Entre Nous, who were sister organizations in Boston. And I digitized all of those, and the originals were requested to go to the Leather Archives, and that's where they went. But because I digitized everything, Mama has a copy of both of them.
We have a copy. There's multiple copies of these things.
And so there is something to be said for being able to digitize these things. The limitation of being able to scan these old documents and put them in is that you can't just go to that file, go to search, and pull up a word. Where if you went into the Bay State Marauders files, which started in 2003 and were kept completely and totally electronically, you could put in a particular search word and everything for that comes up. And it's very convenient when people say, when did this person apply for membership? And then I just put in their name and I go, this date, because it comes right back up from there. Do we have anybody? They said that they put an application in back a couple of years ago. Do you still have that application? And then yep, I still have that, because I can just do a quick search. So it has a, one thing that we are thankful for, because of all of the paper that they saved back in the day, we can see what happened back in the day. But one of the things about the history of some of those things is that it can be limiting, because even though that these are meeting minutes, a lot of times it's there to jog a memory, and it's not something that is a full out explanation. So they put things in such a way that you're really only kind of getting half the information, because this is just there to jog people's memories. for instance, Entre Nous split off of Vikings and there was an argument and a fight, but they don't, the meeting minutes from Vikings MC from August of 1970, when this happened, don't mention anything as to what actually happened. So when it comes to history and being able to see some things, sometimes that can be limiting. And then I don't know if the social media and the way that everybody kind of shares everything these days, where they're sharing every single food, every single meal they've ever eaten, every single thought they've had in their head, whether or not that would actually become a diary of sorts, that when 50 years from now, people go and they want to look back at this person, it's there to know exactly what they thought, what they did, where they went, who they saw. More so of an opportunity than something that you could have with paper. So I think that there's a question of what actually happens within the future. You know, does Facebook become like MySpace and become obsolete down the road, and it slowly goes into the oblivion and no one even bothers looking at it? And who knows if it stays, or how long it stays out on the internet. It can be useful. One of the things that I was able to do with the Vikings file is that in the Entre Nous meeting minutes, they actually reported that one of the Vikings had been murdered. And I went to the Vikings when I got the meeting minutes. I wanted to know what they had to say about him being murdered, and they said nothing. And I had this person's name, and I was actually able to get the article that reported on his death outside, you know, from the newspaper that had actually reported on it. So I was able to find the detail there, but the detail wasn't within the meeting minutes. So sometimes meeting minutes can be good, sometimes they can be bad, but sometimes external sources are the way to go to be able to really know exactly what happened and where things went. And sometimes that can be helpful with things from the past, and sometimes the way that it's being done in the future can also be done. I mean, I could go on and on and on for all kinds of examples of this was good back then, but this is good now. And I see it as a toss-up. You know, I really and truly see it as a toss-up. And that's it.
Very good points. Mama?
No, Pulse, Matt, you got a lot of people and I want to hear them all.
Okay. Pulse?
Simeus.
I'm here. Tapes break or degrade. Hard drives crash, and so do computers. For those that don't know my history, a little bit is I'm a Vietnam vet, boots on the ground. I have letters, photographs, and poetry written to me that got through, that are handwritten, okay? My life in Vietnam would have been decidedly different had I not gotten those letters and postcards and pictures and things. I do not have anything electronic from those days, not one thing. The funny thing about computers, and Mom can tell you this, is that for all the advances they've made on computers, they've got stuff. Somebody was talking earlier about floppy disks. I guarantee you that the majority of you do not have a floppy disk reader on your computer. I'll bet money on it. I've got a computer that does have it, but it's because I decided to keep it. Most of those floppy disks are gone. Most of the real tapes are gone. The handwritten notes, the letters, the books, all of that are still around because people keep them as keepsakes. And they're there as written documentation. Ancestry, for all of their backups and everything, you can, even the government and the military, they will take the backups, 2 backups. I was listening to Scott talking about he had 3 or 4 different backups. The military will go to an entire different facility to create backups. And if that crashes, they're lost. Okay. Paper. Mom's got books going back to 17 and 1800s where you can just stand there and hold that history. The papyruses, and all of that, written history. Electronics, it'll change as fast as the electronics change. As fast as computers progress, the cloud crashes on a regular basis and loses information. The handwritten things and printed, I mean, they still have Gutenberg's Bible. Susie, you mentioned something about, and I'm going to jump around a little bit. Susie, you mentioned something about how your handwriting changes as your emotions change. So does hers. As I have read through, if you ever read her diary, her journal, okay, not the diary, but the journal, the handwritten part where she had to keep it, as she is going through her emotions, her handwriting changes as well.
Pulse, we had to call Mama and ask if there were italics and underlines in the journal because we wanted them to be accurate in the book. And I was surprised to hear that, yes, there were.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is look at it and you can see if she's pissed, it shows. If she's happy, it shows. Because she took the time to write it. I guarantee you, and my friend, she was a friend of my heart. I mean, she was my heart. Long before I ever met Mom. She wrote me poetry. And she has gone on, but the poetry that she wrote is on my shelf. It's on, it's in my places of, I'm going to keep this until I'm gone. Yeah. You made your own case, Mom. Your journals make your own case of, hey, if we don't write it down, that history is going to get lost. Think of all the tribes that have written their history and saved it. Electronics, here today, gone tomorrow, or changed in the next day.
Yeah,
I'm
can't
done.
access that format anymore.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pulse. Mama? Keep going. All right, Bella and Susie, I'm going to skip to folks that haven't gone yet, and we'll come back if that's okay. Okie, glad you're with us tonight.
Real quick. Sorry, just real quick. Before us, I would like to defer to Amber, who I know her hand is raised. So when you get done with Okie, if we can go to Amber, I know she's not feeling well.
Okay.
And also speaks to a point I was going to make that I think it's a generational thing. So Amber, being probably one of the youngest people on the panel that we have tonight, I would like her to speak first.
Okay.
All right, is it okay?
Absolutely.
All right, some of you guys know me as Okie, others you may know me as Terrell, but I'm going to start off as in a previous life, I taught history. And basically most of my career has been based on history. One of the things that we've been talking really good about is how the importance of recording your history and the challenges of dealing with technology and how it can fail, and then also how primary source documents can fail. On the other hand, one of the things that we also need to take into consideration is how do people do history or historiography? And that's also a discipline where people take all of those primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources, and then put them together so it kind of makes sense if it's digital or if it's in print. And so I've been hearing that a lot of the sources that we have, the histories, meeting minutes and everything like that, even if we do have access to them, they're pretty much going to be intelligible considering that a lot of us weren't actually there. And if we don't have firsthand experience who did experience those particular events, then they're just going to be interpreted by somebody else through other documents. And so when we do put together our history, we need to take into consideration it might be a good idea to access everything that we can, both digital and print. And my examples are going to be a bit different. Many years ago, I managed and ran record stores. And this is when they actually had records. And 78s, if anybody remembers 78s, 45s, and of course 33 1/3 are LPs. So what was great about that is you could experience the whole thing as far as music is concerned by looking at the artwork of these large LP covers. You can go on and look on the inside, you can read the inserts, find out all of the history, and you can get lost in that. In addition, that was also a time when you would take and listen to an album from beginning to end, because you actually took the time to do that. Compared to today, when you take a digital download and you're just going to piecemeal an entire work by somebody. Okay, so eventually we saw all of those media fade away until we eventually got to digital downloads. And the challenges that we have with saving and losing information are real. I'm going to give you an example. I had information, and this was audio and visual, that was given to me by people from Japan as gifts. And so I'm pretty good at doing what everybody said, putting them and backing it up, putting it somewhere, and then saving it and everything like that. So I thought I was being really smart, and I got a terabyte, one of those massive drives. And I downloaded all of my audio and video on this. Now, mind you, if you do not remove it correctly, things get lost forever. And so I did lose some history that was actually that very few people have from 1983, a rare performance that I'll probably never, ever see again. And I usually am able to refer that to validate how rope was done in the 80s, and that people actually use cotton and nylon rope in the 80s in Japan. And so that video, that visual example is gone forever. And all because I pulled out the USB cord a little bit too soon.
Mm.
And so that is a problem. On the other hand, one advantage that you have now, especially with documentation, is they use DOIs, or digital object identifiers, which basically gives that particular work or literature a permanent place on the internet forever. And they're committing, if research and literature are assigned a digital object identifier, then if the website crashes or if it goes away, you can't find it on Wayback or anything like that. If you access the DOI, you can go on and find that particular piece. They're not doing that with a lot of stuff that's primarily academics, but that's one thing that's come out of all of this, and that was that they started to do that a little bit over 10 years ago. And so that's one thing that I would recommend for people who do like to do research. Other than that, everything else everybody said, I agree with. And as far as handwriting, tone, emotions, there's nothing more I could add to that. I'm just going to say, yes, those are true things that happen. And I still write thank you notes. And I taught the person I'm mentoring how to write thank you notes when he won his leather title. He wrote thank you notes to all of his judges. And I also write condolence or sympathy cards for people that I know who've passed away. So those things, it's just good things to do and good practice. And I've passed that on to people who I've mentored. That's all I got.
Okay, riff it off of that. To give you a larger example, was it Universal or Miramax. The warehouse burned, and they lost all the original master recordings of
Universal. It was
everything
MCA.
from the 90s, including a historic films. I mean, it's just gone. The original.
Yeah, it was Universal,
happens.
specifically. It was MCI. A lot of R&B stuff primarily.
Yeah. We're gonna take that request. Boot Black Amber, I'm sorry you're not feeling well.
Hi, thank you. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I'm sick and got a heavy dose of the brain fog right now, so I'm sorry if I'm not articulating myself very well. Echoing a lot of what Okinawa was saying, I firmly believe that we have to use all the tools and resources we have available to preserve and disseminate the history that we have. As a boot black and as a kinky librarian myself, there's nothing like having that tactile experience, getting that oral history in person, having that spirit to connection. But Mama, I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you holding this space, getting to engage in this conversation without this access to the internet. I wouldn't know about my Leatherdyke history if not for Blood Sisters and having the access to watch that on the internet, not having digital archives to sift through. I think my generation is reaching for that genuine article, and I think we're using the internet to create and supplement those real life experiences. And a lot of the modern conversations I hear, not in just our community, but in a lot of communities, are how can we make this space more accessible? Some people don't have the money to go travel to these places or have these in-person experiences. Having this digitized allows a wider audience to be reached. It allows people who might be curious but too afraid to come out to do their exploring on their own until they are ready to come out. And my brain fog's kicking in. But yeah, point being made, never again landfill, never again flames. I think the primary consideration has to be, how do we make our history fireproof? Because both elements are
you're fine.
Vulnerable to being destroyed and hidden and buried. We lose digital access very easily, but we also lose physical access just as easily.
True.
So we got to protect it from all sides and not keep it to ourselves.
Thank you, Amber. Off of what Oki said and Amber said, Mama, you may take heart to know that vinyl record sales are way up. The digital generations are figuring out that having a physical copy of things is important. So that's a twist. Folks, it looks like we're going to run late. There is a huge announcement, so try not to leave. I will tease it. The November 2nd Librarian Speaks, which is on a Wednesday, by the way, is going to have a very, very special guest that you all are going to be excited about and not want to miss. Wolf. Great conversation you've got going here, Mom.
Just real quick, if I had asked the question, what is replacing letters and cards? And to my experience, and grant you, I'm not one of the younger generations, but to my experience, what seems to be replacing it is in the social media outlets. When we find a meme and we post it and we tag our friends, or we get a picture and we tag our friends, it's like, hey, saw this, thought of you, that kind of thing.
Okay.
That's, to my mind, what's electronically replacing the cards and the letters.
Very good point.
That's all I had.
Thanks, Wolf. Traveler.
Now, Susie, where were we?
Hang on, we're not here in Traveler. Give it just a second.
Where are you?
You're not coming through. You did unmute, but you're not coming through.
Is that any better?
Now you're coming through.
Yeah,
We're
there you
hearing you. We're hearing you fuss over it.
My laptop was
There you go.
sitting on my bed, I guess. This microphone is getting covered. Anyway, for Amber, I really liked what Amber had to say. And I don't know how old Amber is. I would posit that I'm within 10 or 15 years of her, maybe 5 then. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm kind of in a transitional generation. I grew up with letters, but I also grew up in the age of, the AOL CDs. You got the AOL internet mailed to you. Back in my day, internet came in the mail. Okay, grandma, and like, message boards and ASL, all that stuff. So I've kind of been through both of those worlds, and I still have a lot of my letters from when I met people at like camp in summer and that kind of thing. I still have a lot of those through like high school-ish, and then it really dropped off. So I kept all those. I agree with everything everyone said about seeing the handwriting and the denting into the paper and that distinctive font and all of that stuff. I think Mama V's question was kind of like what has become of the communication system. And I also work with the younger generation. I would say that it's shifted onto the digital platforms, as people have said. I will say that the younger generations think that Facebook is only for old people. And it is true. If you think about it, Facebook is almost 20 years old. I mean, I've been using it for 17, 18 years. So, and it was only a year or two before that it existed. So it's coming up on 20 years, which is an enormously long time for a digital platform to remain relevant. So the younger generations, from what I see, they're going to Instagram, Snapchat, where of course pretty much everything disappears instantaneously unless you save a message, which now you can do. I think in the beginning you couldn't. And also TikTok. I do agree with people that that obviously, server crashes or, you delete your account, all of that stuff is gone. But I do appreciate the online storage aspect of these enormous social platforms. I do have a Facebook, and I love going to see my memories every day. I go every day that I'm on Facebook, which is almost every day. I go look at my old memories, and everything from the almost 20 years past that I posted on, October 6th, I get to see everything. I get to look at all my albums. I can see a post I made from 15 years ago. Like, it brings back all those memories. And I think one of the perks of the digital platform is that it also really easily allows people to post pictures, videos, audio clips that obviously in letters and the paper, you don't necessarily get that. You can get a physical picture, yes, but it's really easy to take a selfie and upload it, and to see that 10 years down the road, it's really cool. So I would be interested to see how we decide to store things as a community and as a society online, in 5, 10, 20 years down the road, because digital is not going away. I also just had one small little humorous thing. I got a lease that I had to sign recently, and they didn't bother, having me come down to the office. They emailed it to me, and I had to e-sign my lease. And so I was thinking, okay, so if the United States declared independence today, are we going to email the Declaration of Independence to everyone? And is Thomas Jefferson, the 32nd, going to click an e-sign? Because there is something to be said about having a physical signature or physical words written down versus a digital signature. That's just a thought I had. So.
And how does John Hancock get his bigger than everybody else's, right?
Yes.
Great stuff, Traveler. Thank you. All right, Bella and Susie.
Thanks. I think that Tom Hancock would have to learn how to zoom in on his signature and make it larger. And I appreciate that anecdote. I just wanted to say, to piggyback off of Amber, I think that correct me if I'm wrong, in Vi's question of you know, where it's going, whether or not we think letters are obsolete, all these things. It's a very generational thing, right? We can sit here and say, oh yeah, letters and what they meant to us, and what is the generation that's speaking about that, right? Whereas where it's going in the future to me is people who didn't necessarily grow up knowing what necessarily writing a letter was or what it was there for, writing postcards, what it was there and what it was there for, writing you know, Christmas cards, thank you cards, the intent behind that, the etiquette behind that, and the genre and when it happened, right? I grew up, not to show my age, my mom was definitely a Miss Manners kind of person, and here's what you do and the appropriate way to thank someone for coming to a party, or thank someone for a wedding, or thank someone for anything, let alone it being, you know, kink, BDSM, artwork. All those things were even more interpersonal when they were received, right? And so as a generation, when you received something where someone sent you a card and also had their personal handwriting in it, whether it was readable or not, because mine was not necessarily so much, but artwork from someone, or hey, I clipped this out of a newspaper because I thought of you and I just wanted to send it to you. All those things are super personal, right? And that was a generational thing, because we didn't have the internet, because we, at the time, we had things called pen pal groups, right? So I became friends with people in New York City, even though I had never been, people in Australia, even though I had never been. I didn't know or necessarily knew that I had anything in common with these people. It was just this pen pal group, and you would write in and then they would connect you with people. And those people, I was able to like realize, wow, what's it like over there? And they would write me something. It doesn't make it true for everyone, but you got these little snippets of people's lives, and that was super interesting, right, for me. And then also when I received Christmas cards or thank you cards or birthday cards, or just a letter in general from my friend who, you know, I want to say early 80s, mid 80s, you know, joined the military, and they would just write me a snippet of what was happening in their day. And I don't know that the generation today understands the feeling and the importance, nor could they, nor should they, right? But understanding what is important to the generation now is what's important moving forward, I think, right? And recognizing what is there an equal feeling? Is there an equal story? Is there any kind of equal thing, right? Like, also for me, prior to my life and my generation, trying to understand my mom, my dad, the people before me, I can only know through what they've told me. Number one, thank you, Vi, because only know what you've told us, right? And the experiences you've had, I haven't lived them. Other people in my generation have not lived them, and probably don't necessarily, as much as we want to understand the emotion in it, can honor it, but we'll never necessarily feel the same thing. And so I feel like the generation now is kind of at that point, and they search it out and want to know the history and want to honor the history. They will never necessarily know that, but it's so important to have all of it, have the letters, have the floppy disks, have the cassettes, have the LPs, have as much information. Just like Amber was saying, I think that you can at least kind of glean some kind of understanding and education out of that. Does that make sense? So that's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bella. All right, we've got two more. I'm going to ask you guys to make it as quick as you can, because we're coming up against 11 o'clock, and the announcement is kind of huge. So Shar and then Scott, and then we'll wrap up and get to the announcement.
I just wanted to add that I'm one of those people that I firmly believe there is nothing as awesome as holding the original thing. You might have noticed when you were in the store that there's another book in there called Tales of the Pearl. Now that is in there because it was a passion of mine. I don't care if anybody buys it. I wanted it because Vi Johnson snuck up behind me my first time in the library and slipped a book into my hand and whispered in my ear. And, you know, Sir lost his slave for a day because I sat down and read the book. Right? He had to come find me because I disappeared off the face of the planet. And I immediately went home and went, I have to have this book because I couldn't finish it. Do you want to know what's really hard to get a hold of? That would be books from the 1800s, especially books that come in 2 separate books. The Pearl comes in 2 books in the original, and I cried. And then, you know, we took some time off and we came back and I went, I have to have Pearl. And I went and looked, still can't get that book. It did come out in the 80s. It costs almost as much as the original book. And I was like, how am I going to get this goddamn book? I want this book. So I went and found the book and I digitized the book and I edited the book because nobody needs that many semicolons or 6-page sentences. And I created the book because I had to have the book. I had to have the stories that were in the book. Okay. Still not as awesome. I have it. It's on my shelf. I'm madly in love with it. Still not as awesome as holding the one that she put in my hands. So that I think there's a place for all of the things because you can hold the 1800s. You can go there and go, oh, you can smell that paper, which old paper has a smell that is just, you can you gently turn the pages because you know they're going to crumble any second. Or I can pick up my book and I can just sit there and read it and I can underline in it because it's my goddamn book. But I can also go into the digital file that I created and I can quote directly from it without messing up the typing because I have that, which will eventually be available. I have to figure out how to do that. So I think there's a place for all of it. We just have to find the place where we remember that the tactile is what, you know, the look, the smell, the taste, that's what creates memories.
Yep.
That's why you have so many young people that don't have the memories. It's because they're doing it all digital. They're missing the tactile. Right? And when they get to a place and they go, wow, that smell. The first time, Amber, the first time you smelled a leather boot, tell me you didn't just melt into a little puddle and somebody had to come scoop you up, right? Or Hubbard's. Oh, you know, I think that we can do it all. We just have to make sure that we do it all.
And save it all.
And save it all.
And that was what you were saying. That made the point to me. Books have a smell and a feel, and there's so much more to it than just the words on the page. Scott?
Just quickly on 2 things, what Char was saying. I started reading Drummer when I was a teenager and other gay porn magazines. So the smell of a magazine does pull me back to, yep, it does pull me back to those days. It is that memory. So that does have another one. Yes. And I agree, Pulse. It, you know, nothing like the smell of a book, new and old, but for me, it was magazines. Having been from Boston and you're calling out John Hancock for being the ultimate size queen. His grave, and there's a link to it right there. It's actually the biggest one in the yard.
Of course.
So he's not just in signature, but also in death, he's a huge size queen too. And that's all.
All right, let me get there and we'll share that one. We got to see those. Oh, geez.
And the fact that it is
It's a
super
dick.
phallic.
I mean,
Just, oh, it's love it.
All right. Let me get to the announcement because it is rather huge. And most of you were here for the last one where we went down this hole and stayed in the rabbit hole for quite a while. It's part of the reason that we ended up till 3:30. So during the last Librarian Speaks, Mistress Meir came up. Does everybody remember the Mistress Meir conversation? And does anybody have pictures of Mistress Meir? And we can Google it. And oh my God, there's mistressmeir.com. And this kind of became a thing. Well, it occurred to me that you folks might like to meet Mistress Meir. And I asked Mama if we could make that happen. And Mama messaged me and told me that I needed to call somebody and see if we could make that happen. So I am thrilled to let you all know that Mistress Meir will be joining us for the November 2nd Librarian Speaks. We are going to enjoy watching Mama, who I'm just going to spotlight and leave her there, while we discuss stories. And Meir tells her side of the stories that we've all heard all these years. We get to hear the rest of the story. So Mistress Meir is going to be joining us and is very much looking forward to it. And I hope you guys will too.
but there is so much more to Meir than just my tales of her. I had sent
You
Char.
saw the pictures.
Yeah. I'll have Char share the pictures while you're talking, Mama.
I sent Char a book, which I think arrived today. We were both published together in Some Women. Our slave journals were printed side by side. And in the introduction, it said that I now served her. But her journey to this tribe is fascinating, including the fact that she created and then ran the first adult emporium in the state of Colorado. And how she became probably at the time, the most photograph dominant in the world. It's a fascinating story all on its own. And hopefully with a little bit of prodding, we can get her to tell you that.
Mama has given permission, and there was a request for pictures last Librarian Speaks. Char is going to have to dig those back out because apparently she closed them. But
We were saving them until we had Meir.
no, we have a few pictures tonight to tease.
There are a lot of photos of Meir on my computer, and Char and Pulse are the only two people I would ever trust to be in that computer and have remote access to it. So Char has seen some of the pictures on my computer file and has picked a few out, and I'll be sending her a few more so that we can have some fun jogging Meir's memory next time we're together. But
you guys will remember asking, and I think a few of you were a little more of an ask where you said, Char, we know you've seen the pictures, show them to us. And she was like, I'm not so sure I can. Now she has the permission, so we will share a few. She is currently under pressure of finding them. What a fabulous conversation
A
you
few
got going
safe
this
ones,
morning.
I hope.
I will say while she's doing that, what a fantastic conversation you got going this evening. That's, I think, the most participation we've had, and thank you all for participating. And it is very interesting.
Are the pictures okay to share? Because again, we're recording, and where does this go?
We selected nicely.
Okay.
Yes, these are
safely.
Yeah.
I will add to the conversation that we had this evening. For those of you who do most of your things digitally, I will give you the same conversation we have with Vi a lot. Save your history. I know that you would argue that your history is not important. You're just so-and-so, but it's not. Put it somewhere. Think about how to save it so that down the road it's available. They're speechless. See, I knew we'd lose everybody as soon as we did this.
Yes. So I went and grabbed another one because I couldn't find the one I actually opened, but this one is just as stunning, so it'll work. I believe that was actually at Mir's wedding.
Yeah, that was a fabulous wedding.
And then, no.
Speaking
My
of the
first
most
femdom
photographed,
magazine I've ever seen a black woman.
what was that, Paul?
First time I'd ever seen a black woman as a femdom was that cover.
And
very cool.
I remember when that was taken.
We appreciate her for it a lot.
The first time I walked through her house, I walked around looking at some of the images from that magazine with my mouth open.
Paul, you'll probably appreciate this story. Mama didn't warn me about the voice. I'm going to warn everybody about the voice so that when Mir comes in, you don't immediately all faint. You had the voice as well.
Yes.
So when I made the actual phone call, I had steeled myself. I got all the way through the call. We had actually moved over. I had put Mir on speaker, and Sharon and Mir were talking, and we wrapped up the call. And Mir snuck in and got both of us with a, okay, bye-bye. And my knees buckled.
And then I made him call Vi so I could complain that Mir was mean to me.
The funny thing about that was I was standing next to Char when it happened, and she didn't make fun of me for it. She went, me too.
That is Mir with her partner, MJ Bradley. Now, the day that I met Mir, I also got one of the two worst beatings of my life. I was in New York at one of the many pro-dom evenings. Once upon a time, all of the great houses in New York were usually open for people 2 nights a week. So that the women who were there did a series of scenes as vignettes, and you could sit and talk, learn. They were wonderful round tables, usually of about 100 people, and the men and women, usually women of whatever house. I was sitting on the floor at the feet of the woman I served, and I happened to be on the aisle. And probably 2/3 of the way back. And a woman walked out, let me rephrase that, a set of legs walked down the aisle. and the legs went on and on and on and on and on. And I believe the person who had my collar had said something, and all I could see were these legs that just went on for eternity. And Mir is very long-limbed, and when you add 6-inch spiked thigh-high leather boots, they got a whole lot longer. And I watched the legs, and I realized I was stuttering. And that's how I met Mir. Now, the scenes are over. Everyone is, hanging around and talking. And all I could, and I was still sitting on the floor, and all I could see were legs. Eventually I got to know those legs and the woman that went with them, but there were these legs. And the voice, as Matt said, was sort of extra. By the time I realized there was also a beautiful face and an incredible mind attached to the legs, I was already hooked. Went home and went, you didn't hear a thing I said all night, did you? No, ma'am. Bam. And I don't remember a lot after that. The legs got me into an awful lot of trouble.
Attached to an incredibly sadistic mind. You left out a word.
Oh no, this was with Catherine.
Yeah. But I'm talking about Mir's mind. You said Mir had a magnificent mind. She does.
She's also a brilliant photographer.
Yes. She
And
has lots of skills.
entertainers, which is
Mhm.
another one of those things most people don't realize.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that she happens to be a tad bit twisted, that's just icing on the cake.
Tad bit twisted
I've
is like
seen
being
those
a little
pictures of-
pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay, folks,
With triplets. No.
we are trending into after party territory here, so I'm going to wrap it up and thank everyone for attending this Librarian Speaks.